Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome to really no more migraines. And you might want to say, how do you do that? I want to talk today about the fact that it is possible to overcome migraines. And I know many people are suffering from it. I'm trying to get into a better light situation. All right, but that can only happen if I turn off that light, which I will do. So since this is a not very official lesson, there we go. But it will be on YouTube. You will be able to find it later to go back to it and show to others. And it will be under the title, Really No More Migraines. I wanted to talk to you about self-healing, and as you may know, Johanna's Raw Foods is my background and my company. I help people heal themselves from all sorts of things by changing diet and by changing their emotional, mental setup, and by releasing old trauma. And all of us have some kind of trauma that we need to release. It's not something that the few crazy ones of us need to do. It's just part of life. We all have childhood trauma or birth trauma or teenage trauma. And we also have injury trauma from falling as a child and bruising to car accidents and other such trauma that stays in our body. So I wanted to start with a little story about me. And just briefly, I'm a professor of film, actually, not of nutrition and not of medicine. Writing, directing, producing has been my expertise, but I've also been a language translator for a large corporation for 16 years, and I have worked at Waldorf schools. I'm a certified Waldorf teacher as well. How I come to food has to do, and to healing and self-healing has to do with the fact that from an early age, I felt that this body can be shaped by ourselves, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that right now. So, and not just our body can be shaped, the planet too is being shaped by us humans on the planet, and how we interact with it has to do with our consciousness of the fact that everything we do impacts, and vice versa. So when I was 9 years old, I had already massive tooth problems. So I'm walking to the dentist, and this is in a time, you know, where we walked 15, 20 minutes across town on our own as kids, knowing where the destination was. And we didn't even have a car, I don't believe, at the time. This is in Europe. And I'm walking to the dentist, and I know that that drill is going to go up into my teeth. And that drill at the time was not a water drill, and it was not anything, and there was no Novocaine, which I'm happy about that there wasn't, because it left my brain a little bit sharper. I'm thinking of what I'm going to do to not jerk around and make it worse, to not yell or to not moan. And I come up with an idea that I will just welcome the drill. So I'm sitting in the chair, 9 years old again, and the drill goes into my tooth, and it's an upper tooth. So, and I begin to say to myself, oh, this is okay, it's all good. And I relax, and I can turn this pain into sweat, and I start sweating profusely. And it's not a hot day. At the time, you know, we didn't have many hot days in Germany. That's just lately with global warming that it's getting really hot in the summers. So, and this is not in a hot season. I don't know which season it was, but I do know that it wasn't a hot day. And I'm sitting there and I realize, wow, with my thinking, I can turn this incredible pain of this metal drill on my nerve in my tooth into sweat. And just sitting there limp, sweating. So that revelation gave me a completely different relationship to pain and understanding that pain, yes, is physical, but it's our brain that reads the pain and or turns it into something else. And of course, needless to say, walking out of that dentist office, I did not have continuing pain like I used to have when going to the dentist. So I was relaxed. I was okay. I was skipping. I was really proud of myself in addition, because like, whoa, I made it. I didn't yell. I didn't moan. You know, I didn't jerk away. I sweated. That's it. And I felt good about that. And feeling good about that made it even more so that the pain suddenly wasn't a big issue. So that's as a 9-year-old. I'm not telling you to turn pain into sweat right now, but it just, that was my first experience of turning pain into something else, or realizing that pain is not just the biological reaction to a physical injury. Then there are many more experiences in my life that teach me that acute pain actually isn't perceived as pain. We get into, at least I do, get into a state of observing ourselves, and the pain then sets in when we're back in normalcy, when we've been patched together or something like that, for example, after a car accident. But I'm going to jump right now to a couple of years ago. I'm in business training with my business coach, Shanda Sumter, and I'm getting to hear from her that after giving birth to her first child, she was 40, just like I was 40 with my first child, she gets these incredible back pains, and they're so severe that she's leaning over her bed, picking up her child, and drops the child because her back is so severely, but of course it's on the bed, and this would not have happened anywhere else. Hi, Jacqueline. Glad to have you here. So we're talking about pain and our physical reaction to pain. So Shanda at the time did a huge amount of research. What can I do to overcome this back pain? And why is it suddenly coming up? I didn't injure my back, you know, okay, after birth, we have all sorts of physical strains and stresses. And she finds a book by Dr. Sarno, Healing Back Pain, and another book, The Great Pain Deception, based on Dr. Sarno's findings. And these findings do, when I find out about it, exactly what I had experienced as a 9-year-old. They realize that pain, in addition to a biological wellness that we need to have as a base, pain is really created and especially recreated and perpetuated and becomes chronical when emotional stress lodges in our body and the brain invents physical pain. This is how Dr. Sarno, in paraphrased words, explains it. When the brain tucks that pain, that emotional baggage away by creating physical pain. So, and it can come out in back pain, it can come out in joint pain, it can come out in migraines. Migraines is a big one. Now, yes, we need to feed the brain, and I'm going to talk about that in a little moment, but let me go to this emotional baggage tuck away issue first, so that we get to the fact that you as on your own, you can overcome migraines. Well, maybe not on your own, because somebody has to teach you how to do that. And again, I was then learning from my business coach, how to overcome back pain, because the same thing happened to me when I had to close my factory and was very upset, felt like a total failure. And I'm sure most of you have had experiences like that, and maybe not as big as closing a business and a factory. And of course, today I know why, and today I know that this is completely normal and happens to almost everybody who starts a business at one point in that business. So I started having back pains, even though I was fully organic, raw vegan, and exercising. And I went back to that book, The Great Pain Deception, and realized that this is a condition, as Sarno describes it, that emotional, mental pain is tucked away and the brain creates physical pain so that we don't have to deal with the emotional issue. And here comes the overcoming trick. So we start talking to our brain. We start doing things that allow our brain to be overridden by our intention. Now, it's our brain is, of course, the body, that the part in our body that is doing the thinking, or at least we think so. Yet there is this other, I used to call it the super I, the super ego, or, well, ego has a negative connotation in this culture, but the I, that is me driving this train, that is my body, driving this vehicle, that I can talk to its own brain and can talk it out of performing this exercise. Of course, this exercise of creating pain to overcome or to hide emotional trauma. And then there are various ways of going about that. There's not just one way. And it's a step-by-step program that I teach to overcome those pain issues. So when I came across this this information, The Great Pain Deception, and I really highly recommend that book. I don't get any shares from it. I realized that I too have to find my own way of overcoming my backaches, and I could then teach others how to overcome migraines. But before I go to the first step that I want to explain to you in more detail, I want to say that on the food and food supply side of things, there are definitely 2 or 3 things that you can do immediately to alleviate migraine reoccurrence and severity. And that is, number 1, gluten. Gluten seems to be directly related to headaches and, of course, stomach issue, digestive issue, as most of you will know. But this headache thing is like a lot of sugar. Gluten, or more so even, interferes with brain function and gives us that sudden hype and then pain or sluggishness or loss of energy. So eliminating gluten from your diet is very important. The next thing on that list is dairy. Dairy, of course, creates in the body sugar-like effects, refined sugar-like effects. I'm not one of the people who believe that we should take all fruit sugars out, natural fruit sugars, meaning bananas and apples and oranges and pineapples and mangoes and all those beautiful things, out of our diet because they all contain sugar. But I am realizing that the refined sugars and all dairy products, cheeses, yogurts, kefirs, cream, etc., should be taken out because our body cannot process them properly, and they put more stress on our digestive system than is good for us. So if you clean up your diet, and it's easier for the body, in my experience and understanding, to handle a little bit of lean meat than to handle, and that is me speaking as a vegan, so but not a fanatic vegan, so I don't want to be fanatic here. Taking dairy out will significantly cleanse your body's ability to process foods and process turning what you put into your mouth into energy, because it cleans out the mucous membranes. It eliminates superfluous mucus that we get as soon as we put dairy into our mouth. So taking out gluten, taking out dairy are those two food elements that will help greatly overcoming recurring migraines. So what did I do? Though I didn't have migraines, I had those backaches. I started doing what I read one 70-year-old woman had done. I started going running, thinking that, and going running with the intention of talking to my back, of saying, this is ridiculous, talking to my brain, you don't need to give me pain, and actually yelling and cursing at it. And then laughing about my doing this exercise every day, repeatedly. So, and it works. And again, there are hundreds of examples in these books that I'm recommending you look at. It totally works. Then an early client of mine was an elderly woman when I was still very young, and who had recurring migraines, and who explained to me that she thought that people who always like to please other people tend to have migraines, and she didn't know how to get out of wanting to please other people, which again, you know, is putting stress on yourself to always be perceived as the good person, putting stress on yourself to not do your own self-care, but care about others more than yourself. So in her case, and this is again, this is me as a young woman, long before I officially worked as life coach, I taught her how to relax, how to deep relax, and first in movement and then in stillness and inner images. And her migraines subsided, together with, instead of eating her cooked oatmeal every morning, with which is often done in Europe, cooking with cow's milk, actually, instead of water. So you cook the oat flakes in milk as opposed to, so instead of doing that, she was now sprouting grains and eating those sprouted grains in the morning with fresh fruits. And that helped considerably on the food end. So taking some of that dairy out of her diet, most of it, and doing the relaxation exercises worked. In another client of mine, the migraines went away with very much her intent. She was already on a pretty clean diet and worked toward the inner work, talking to her brain, talking to herself as to not needing this interference, not needing this. She could deal with her trauma. There's also, of course, a very valuable step in the multi-step program that is doing some deep sessions of trauma release. You go back to your childhood, wherever that trauma is, and in a very beautiful way, the way I do it, I think it's a very beautiful process, transforming rather than just releasing or condemning or thinking you don't want to have anything to do with it anymore. So transforming the trauma, but um, being a little direct with your brain in terms of stopping it from creating these pain issues out of the emotional trauma. Now, to some, this may sound like complete hogwash, but that's why I love to recommend Dr. Sarno's books, Healing Back Pain, and then the author slips my mind right now, and then based on that very medical research, the book, The Great Pain Deception. And then, of course, allow yourself to find somebody who will guide you in doing the step-by-step program. And again, I can offer those services, allowing you to practice regularly. That's another, of course, one of those things that is the hardest in trying to change our habits and trying to change how we perceive our own abilities. It helps to have somebody guide us and remind us and walk us through the steps that will eliminate your migraines. Now, of course, I'd love for you to, in the comments, tell me a couple of stories of maybe success stories or of questions that you have. And I will be happy to address those, and I'll be happy to sign you up for a 50% discount if you want to do the No More Migraines program with me. In whether you do that in the comments here, or whether you see this on my YouTube channel, Johanna's Raw Foods, and take this discount from there. You can get it either way, but you have to negotiate with me personally. So respond by text or email, and text here in the comments, and I will respond. All right, everybody, we have a little bit more time. Jacqueline, are you still with us? Jacqueline Gadadi, would you like to comment on and tell us your migraine story? That would be helpful. I know that, who else was watching? Elena Zanfai, are you watching, and can you comment on your migraine experiences? That would be really helpful. And the first step, like I said, of the program is to begin to do the deep relaxation and to allow yourself what that feels like to talk yourself out of a little pain. You could just experiment, push your nail into your fingertip and say to your brain, that's not pain, that's not pain, that's not pain. Turn it into sweating, like I did as a 9-year-old. And there it is. I can still do it. I can feel the sweat literally produced on my skin. And I'm not telling you to injure yourselves. But those tiny little experiments can teach you that it works. And then, of course, for the bigger issues, you want to take the time and do the deep relaxation and do the step-by-step transformation of the emotional pain. Of course, this, when you hurt your finger, that's a direct pain. But even for this direct pain, talking to your brain works. It's an interesting level of consciousness when you realize that you are indeed the driver of this vehicle. Recently, I was at a health fair at a veg fest, raw veg fest in Florida at the Hippocrates Health Institute, and a gentleman was complaining that my raw chocolate cake, it's this super delicious ganache cake, was too expensive. And I said, well, you know, he said something like, oh, that would mean I would spend $20,000 a year on my food. And I said, well, how much did you pay for your last car? And he said, well, I drive a good car, 40,000. So you're really saying the vehicle that you drive through the streets is more important than the vehicle you use to drive through the streets, which is your body, that you use to live on planet Earth, which is your body. So he got a laugh out of that. But that is very much our level of current consciousness, that we don't realize that this vehicle, our body, is actually the one that we should take care of before we drive the big cars and own the big houses and are constantly sick and are not able to enjoy this vehicle, our body, as much as we possibly could. All right, guys, that's my lesson on no more migraines. You can overcome migraines. You can eliminate the reoccurrence and start by, when the triggers happen, knowing what to do to not have the bout occur. And it's done with food and talking to your brain. It's a beautiful thing. That's it for today. I hope to hear from you guys, and I'm here to help you make that a reality in your life. It's a beautiful thing when you have chronic pain and you know you can overcome it and it will not reoccur. Or if it begins to reoccur, you again know what to do. You can switch it off like a light switch, literally. Of course, not as quickly. It takes a little bit more time, but yes, you can. All right, that's it for today. Follow me on YouTube, Johanna's Raw Foods. My Instagram is still down, but it will be back up eventually, so look for me at Johanna's Raw Foods on Instagram. And of course, you'll find me on LinkedIn, and you find me on Facebook and johannasrawfoods.com. I look forward to communicating with you more. Until, be well, no more migraines. Bye.